Mr. Ambassador, thank you for joining SKAI's Nightly Newscast.
Thank you for having me.
Let me start the discussion with an issue that has monopolized the public discourse over the last 3 months, and I'm talking about the Turkish-Libyan memorandum. What if Ankara materialized its declaration and started exploratory drilling activities, say, for example, south of Crete? In that case, are you worried for a possible escalation or a military incident?
So let me say a couple of things. First, we're going to try to avoid speculating about the future. But Washington has spoken very clearly on the MOU itself. We see it as destabilizing and unhelpful. I've made very clear the United States legal interpretation, including the important fact that this does nothing to take away the rights that Greece is entitled to under international maritime law. These are issues that need to be settled through dialogue and negotiation, not through unilateral action that ignores the rights and interests of one of the affected parties, like Greece in this case. I think the other really important principle is that Greece and the United States are agreed on the importance of continuing to work to manage a more normal relationship in the Aegean and in the Eastern Mediterranean. That was a powerful message for Prime Minister Mitsotakis' very successful visit to Washington, D.C. It was reaffirmed in the historically important letter that Secretary Pompeo sent just a couple of weeks ago, laying out very clearly the United States' commitment to stand with Greece and support Greece's security as we continue to work together as allies in this very complicated region.
So I understand that in a possible escalation, the U.S. would intervene as it did in the past.
I think we're going to try to avoid speculating about the future. What we're going to focus on is how we work to support the efforts that Prime Minister Mitsotakis and his government are making, including through the discussions this week here in Athens of the delegations from the Ministry of Defense, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, to develop confidence building. That's where the United States wants to see the focus. We want to see the focus in a positive way on how to build a zone of stability and prosperity and shared interests.
Are the U.S. continuing their diplomatic effort to de-escalate tension, as Minister Pompeo said during Mitsotakis' visit in Washington?
Of course. We are engaged. We will remain engaged. This is a priority for the United States. It was very much part of the conversation just 2 weeks ago when SACEUR, General Walters, was here in Athens and in Ankara. This is a daily focus of American politics and American engagement through our diplomacy in the Eastern Mediterranean and Aegean regions.
Now, allow me a clarification on your recent statements. I understand that when it comes to the way that the U.S. interprets international law of the sea, inhabited islands are entitled to the same treatment as continental territory. Does that apply also to non-inhabited islands, large and small islands, like, for example, Castellorizo?
So it applies to islands as a general principle. There's been a lot of confusion about this. I don't want to add to the confusion tonight. What I would emphasize is our view that islands, as a general rule, are just like continental territory in terms of the rights that they are entitled to under international maritime law. End of discussion.
But it's all islands?
It's all islands. I will let others get into the discussion of what is a rock and what is an island, but islands are all the same.
Let me shift the discussion on Libya. It looks like Turkey is constantly violating the arms embargo agreed on the Berlin conference. And how does it reflect into its credibility as a force involved in the peace process, in Berlin process, whereas Greece or countries of North Africa are excluded from this process?
So we have an active conversation with Greece on these issues. It's something that Secretary Pompeo has talked about with Foreign Minister Dendias. It's an issue that I've had an extensive dialogue on with my counterparts here in Athens. We are very, very focused on how to de-escalate the violence in Libya. We've called on all of the parties. That includes Russia and its Wagner mercenaries. That includes Turkey. That includes the Gulf Arabs to cease actions, including weapons deliveries, that deepen the violence and deepen the tension. So there was an important declaration from the Europeans this week. We're going to see what happens, but the United States' focus is on getting a diplomatic process back on track.
According to the U.S., should Greece be invited, should Greece be involved into a process for resolving the Libyan issue?
So I don't think we've taken a position on that issue per se. We recognize that Greece has important interests here. The Berlin conference was not an American event. That's an issue to put to your European allies. And I think it's significant that Foreign Minister Dendias participated so actively. And it was a pretty clear and consistent signal from the European Union, from the foreign affairs ministers this week. So let's see what happens for the next go-round. I've heard clear messages from countries like France on this, and ultimately it's going to be a European decision.
Let's focus a little bit on the economy. What's next to come on American companies investing to Greece? You've been in the country for more than 4 years now, and you've seen the country, you've seen the economy picking up. Are there any tangible investments that you foresee in the future from American companies, and what areas do you designate?
That's a good question for Minister Georgiadis and for the Greek government. They clearly are seeking to create the conditions for more growth. We're very excited about what's happening in the technology sector with companies like Deloitte and Pfizer. Minister Georgiadis is focused like a laser beam on the Elefsina shipyards, building on the success we have at Syros. There's a lot happening in the tourism industry, in the property development sector. We're obviously hugely focused on the final decision on the Hellenic Cone development. That will be a $1 billion project as it comes together. So really transforming the tourism economy of the Attica region. So what's changed most dramatically over my time here is now there's not a week that goes by when I do not have some American investor in my office saying, there seems to be a lot happening here in Greece. Tell me about it. So clearly Greece is back on the radar scope for American investors. The government is trying to make the case that the time to put the money in is now. I agree. The time to move into Greece is now because the government has sent the right signals. And Greece, as the Prime Minister said in Washington, Greece is relatively inexpensive today. It will not be in the future.
Right. A couple of years ago, you gave an interview to SKAI and you said, I'm afraid of an accident in the Aegean Sea. Are you still afraid of an accident?
I think we always have to be worried about the risk of miscalculation when you have advanced military forces operating in close proximity. I'm more optimistic today because I see the really strong effort that the Prime Minister and his government are making to lower tensions and to create a more normal atmosphere. So that's our focus at this point.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's great to talk to you.